Good morning, and we're going to continue our walk through the Italy and Germany case studies with a discussion today about Germany, the rise of Adolf Hitler from the end of World War I through 1933. First of all, we want to make sure we're remembering the impact of World War I, and we're comfortable with how that's going to contribute to the coming of the Second World War. So remember that despite the losses that Germany experienced in that last year of war, German armies were never pushed back into Germany, which left many in the military and many back in Germany feeling like they didn't really lose this war. Military leadership, however, was convinced that the war couldn't be won. They wanted that surrender based on Woodrow Wilson's 14 points. But the German nation, and this is what the military leadership recognized, the German nation was on the brink. Labor strikes, political unrest, sailors mutinying their posts, food shortages in Germany. The Kaiser abdicates his throne, and a new German government is ultimately going to agree to an end to this war on the 11th of November of 1918. Now, some of those German soldiers and citizens felt that this new government that leaned to a socialism had betrayed the German people and the nation by surrendering in a war that they weren't actually losing. We refer to this as the stab in the back myth, and this is certainly something that Adolf Hitler is feeling. The Treaty of Versailles is also going to be a contributing factor to Nazism and eventually the rise of Adolf Hitler. Remember that this Treaty of Versailles was a compromise of punishments created by the British and the French primarily in order to give a defeat to Germany. It establishes a League of Nations. It occupies the German region of the Rhineland and calls for the Rhineland to be demilitarized by Germany. Production in the coal-rich region of the Saar is going to go to France for the next 15 years. Germany is going to lose territory all along its borders, but also overseas colonies. No Anschluss, no political union with Austria. The German military will be demilitarized. The army shrunk to 100,000 men. The Navy and the Air Force virtually eliminated. The Germans must sign a war guilt clause accepting responsibility for this war, and then that leads to the punitive reparations they must pay. So where does Hitler come in? Adolf Hitler is born an Austrian, but he served in a Bavarian unit in the German army. He, like many other soldiers, believed that the Treaty of Versailles was what he called a diktat. It was a treaty forced upon the German people, nothing that the Germans agreed to. He referred to the Weimar government that ultimately agreed with this treaty. He called them the November criminals because the armistice was back in November. His disgust with the outcome of this war and the ultimate Treaty of Versailles radicalized Adolf Hitler. Now, following the war, he was still connected with the military of Germany, and he was assigned a position to investigate political parties that might have been radicalized. This is the early Weimar Republic. There's a lot of tension in Germany. There's concern about civil uprising, and so men like Adolf Hitler were just told to go listen in on party meetings and see what's going on, see how radical these groups are. And Adolf Hitler is sent to a party known as the German Workers' Party. He actually liked what he heard. Adolf Hitler will quickly become a vocal leader of that German Workers' Party. He renames it the National Socialist German Workers' Party, or Nazi for short. The word national in German is National. And so Nazi for short. He adopts an identifiable symbol for his party, the symbol of the swastika. He organizes a paramilitary group of stormtroopers, what are known as brown shirts, kind of a complement to Benito Mussolini's black shirts down in Italy. What is Nazism and what is Adolf Hitler's foreign policy goals? There's a couple major ones. First, the idea of pan-Germanism, or what is known as Gross Deutschland, Greater Germany, a unification of all German-speaking peoples, wherever they might be. That calls for an Anschluss with Austria. Remember, Hitler is Austrian. That calls for German-speaking people in Czechoslovakia, particularly a region called the Sudetenland in Czechoslovakia, to become a part of the Greater Germany. The Germans in Poland, remember that Polish corridor that was carved for the new Polish state that bisected the new Germany after World War II. There was many German-speaking people within that region. Hitler wanted them all in one country. He called for racial purity, what he considered racial purity, which largely meant a driving out of the Jewish population in Germany. And he called for living space, or Lebensraum, for the German people. He saw this as Eastern European territory and Russia, which of course is populated with millions of Slavs and millions of Jews. Those people would need to be pushed away or eliminated in Hitler's foreign policy. So where does the Nazi Party ultimately get its strength from? It's just a fledgling political party in the early days of the Weimar Republic. Well, much of this comes from some of the weakness within the Weimar Republic during its early years in control of Germany. There are attempts by many groups, particularly leftist groups, communist groups, to overthrow this government, including a revolt in 1919 called the Spartacist Revolt. Now, these uprisings failed, none of them were successful, but it does show how much tension there is within this young political system in Germany. There are frequent political assassinations in the early years of this new republic. And then things really come to a head in January of 1923 with an event known as the Ruhr Crisis. Germany misses a reparations payment to Belgium and France. And so Belgium and France are going to invade the Ruhr region of Germany. They're going to send an army in, and you can see this photo above me of French soldiers marching into Germany to demand those reparations payments, to basically seize German production and demand reparations payments. Now, the Weimar government is going to ultimately encourage the workers in that region to peacefully resist by just basically going on strike and not working. But remember, when you don't work, you don't get paid. So the Weimar government will continue to pay these workers by printing more marks, printing more German marks. This is going to begin what is known as the hyperinflation crisis in Germany, where the value of the German currency will absolutely plummet, and people will find that their life savings is worth virtually nothing. This economic crisis and this political crisis is going to further radicalize Adolf Hitler and the Nazis, leading to the November 1923 Beer Hall Putsch. Beer Hall Putsch is an attempt by Adolf Hitler and his Nazis to literally launch a revolution in Germany. It's inspired by Mussolini's March on Rome. The whole plan was to get a bunch of these German Nazi stormtroopers together in Munich and head all the way up to Berlin in the north. It's ultimately a complete failure. The German police and military put it down. A number of Nazis are shot and killed. Adolf Hitler himself arrested. Hitler will go to prison. He's originally sentenced to 5 years in prison, but he will end up serving less than a year before he is paroled. While in prison, though, he writes his manifesto, his book, Mein Kampf, My Struggle. And this book, in a very meandering way, is going to detail Adolf Hitler's philosophy and his ultimate goals for Nazi Germany. After prison, he returns to lead the Nazi Party, but this time to work through legal political channels. Now, Germany is going to experience some better times in the late 1920s. We see some economic recovery and political stability within the Weimar government. Some of that is led to this man above me. His name is Gustav Stresemann, and he is the foreign minister of Germany. He works with, he's going to work with the United States to secure loans that will help him pay reparations and halt inflation. Germany will join the League of Nations. Germany will also sign the Locarno treaties. Germany will sign the Kellogg-Briand Pact. So we've got a lot of this internationalism that we see from other countries like Japan and Italy during the 1920s. But then the Great Depression hits. And with the coming of the Great Depression, the German government and economy are going to again experience a setback. The United States will call on German loans. German unemployment is going to skyrocket. Adolf Hitler will portray the Nazi Party as the only party able to solve Germany's problems. Desperate Germans were more attracted to Hitler's promise. And as you can see on the graph above me, as the economic crisis got worse, more and more votes went to the Nazi Party. In 1932's presidential elections in Germany, Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party earned 30% of the vote. This strong showing led Adolf Hitler to be appointed Chancellor of Germany by the President Hindenburg. And one note, Hindenburg was one of the lead generals for the German military in World War I, now President of Germany. In February of 1933, there's a fire in the German Reichstag. This is essentially the German Capitol building. It's its legislative building. The building burned down. It was blamed on a communist plot, and this would be used by the German government to begin to limit free speech and limit the press and limit association with parties like the communists. In March of 1933, following the burning of the Reichstag, a law was passed by the German Reichstag called the Enabling Act, which is going to give the Chancellor and his cabinet legislative powers without Reichstag consent. And it will lead to a banning of the Communist Party, where now Hitler will have the 2/3 votes he needs to change the Constitution. Think of Benito Mussolini in Italy, ultimately gaining supreme legislative control over the state and being able to enact anything that he wanted to. Parliaments, trade unions, communists and socialists within Germany are all going to be banned. In June of 1934, in an event known as the Night of the Long Knives, Adolf Hitler's Nazi Party will move to strike out any opposition he had within his political organization. Remember, we're seeing this in American politics today. Not all Republicans agree with the actions of President Trump. Not all Democrats agree with Joe Biden. And so this is Adolf Hitler's move to purge any of those that are not supportive of Adolf Hitler within the Nazi Party, to drive them out, many of them being killed or ultimately put into early concentration camps. Following President Hindenburg's death in August of 1934, Adolf Hitler will combine the offices of the presidency and the chancellorship into one title, Der Führer, the leader of Germany. We'll be back in a couple days.